Welcome to the European Parliament in Brussels for Talking Europe. Last week's budget talks ended in failure, revealing tensions between rich and poor member states. And as we'll see in our programme, European charities are sounding the alarm. They fear cuts to the EU budget will lead to the end of Europe's food programmes. Now, in the second part of Talking Europe, I'll travel to Strasbourg to meet Vaira Vike-Freiberger, a former Latvian president. She's a well-known pro-European, and she's calling on EU leaders to be more pro-European and to show more leadership. But let's start here in Brussels at the European Parliament. Each year, 18 million Europeans rely on Europe's food aid programs to feed themselves. With an annual budget of 500 million euros, the scheme provides food to charities in 20 member states. But following pressure from a group of countries, including Germany, the program will be abandoned at the end of next year. Charities sound the alarm. They warn this decision will have dramatic consequences. The European Commission has proposed a new fund, but its creation is currently frozen as EU leaders fail to agree on a new budget for 2014-2020. So my question today is, will there be cash, will there be money to help Europeans in need feed themselves? Well, I will put this question to my two guests on this set, starting to my right with you, Ines Ayala Sender. Hello, you are an MEP from Spain and you belong to the group of Socialists and Democrats. Also on this set, Gerben-Jan Gerbrandy, you're from the Netherlands and you belong to the group of Liberals for Europe. Welcome to both of you, and I'll start with you, Ines Ayala Sender. It's a bit ironic because we are in the middle of a very harsh economic crisis. The number of impoverished citizens is increasing each year, each month actually. And Europe wants to scrap its food programs. That's a bit ironic.
No, it's dramatic, I would say, because it is true that the actual situation is more than we are making more unequal the people. That means that there will be more poor people. I must say that in my country, for example, we know very well that even in my region, that some part of the children, they just can eat when they eat at school. And even though the government
no food on the table in the evening when they come home.
Yeah. They just and some parents are they even teaching them just to take some part of the bread or something for having something at dinner. This is happening today, and this is why I think that is unacceptable that we just put out this kind of help, which is an important signal also for governments of the 27 in order to go on with this program.
Gerben-Jan Gerbrandy, the official reason why this program will be scrapped is because some countries, including Germany and the Netherlands, say there's a problem. Because originally this program was part of the common agricultural policy. What we're doing is to use stocks, unsold food, and give it to people in need. But over the years, we've seen that more and more food was actually bought on the markets. Currently it's 90%. And so that's why Germany and the European Court of Justice says it's illegal. That's not part of the program. We need to find new funds. But still, it's sending a very negative message for Europe.
Well, for me, this is not an ideological debate, whether it's government's responsibility to make sure that people have food on their plates. I think it's absolutely clear that in the beautiful European welfare state system, which makes Europe the best place to live on this planet, it's absolutely clear that that's a government's responsibility if people are not able to provide food for themselves. The key question to me is, at what level, which government level should this be done? And I don't think that this is primarily a European responsibility. I'm not against transfer of money from rich parts of Europe to less rich parts of Europe. So I'm not against transfers of money. I'm just against the system that through Brussels bureaucracy we are providing food to people who need food. So that is one thing. The other one is that it's the same with school milk system, a school fruit system, that it seems more to be introduced from the idea that farmers need to get rid of their produce than that it's intended to help poor people. And that also, for me, is a wrong use of European public money.
But you're saying it's the responsibility of member states to provide food to people who can't feed themselves. But the reality is countries like Spain, Greece, Eastern European countries are facing very difficult times with budget cuts. So this idea of solidarity, European solidarity, was actually quite interesting, wasn't it?
Yes, and I'm not against that system of solidarity. That's why I'm saying I'm not against transfer of money. I'm willing, from a Dutch point of view, I'm willing to pay for much poorer people in other parts of Europe. So I'd rather have a direct transfer of money from Brussels or from the Netherlands towards the national government or even local governments in Spain or Greece or whatever poor country in Europe, than to have this European system of providing food for people who are in need.
I think that, well, it's very easy to say that Brussels has nothing to do with that, but at the end of the day, the decisions not taken by Brussels bureaucracy, as it is said, but by member states, governments of member states, Germany, for example, or the Netherlands or Sweden, some governments in the northern part of Europe are putting pressure on the governments in the south in a way that they have to cut even this kind of basic assistance to people, and also cutting the salaries because of the competitiveness. I mean that this is not that Brussels bureaucracy is deciding, is that some governments, I must say right-wing governments or with liberals together, that they are deciding, they are putting pressure on the governments in the south in order to have this cut, this austerity, which is just making these inequalities.
Okay, well, before we continue our conversation, I'd like to take a look at our report, because it's really the case that charities across Europe are raising the alarm, saying that if the Commission can't come up with a new system to fund food aid assistance, well, they will run out of food and they won't be able to do their job. Let's watch our report.
The European Union's food aid programme is under threat, and its funds may be dramatically cut. In protest, French charity Secours Populaire is holding a picnic with a difference. People clean their plates and chew carefully, but it's all make-believe.
We're miming the meals of the 18 million Europeans who receive food aid, people who from 2014 will have empty plates because we, the charities, will have nothing to give them.
It's a mixture of the grotesque and the ridiculous. Grotesque because there are people who will die of hunger because they go to the food banks to survive. And it's ridiculous because food aid only costs Europe €1 per European per year.
In France, 4 million people rely on such European aid, delivered by food banks and associations like Secours Populaire or the Red Cross.
Empty plates, as we saw there. The airfoodproject.com, by the way, if our viewers want to have a look at the project. This is, of course, a huge problem for Europe, but this also says a lot about our new society in Europe. The crisis, poverty is rising. According to Eurostat, up to 23% of Europeans are actually living below poverty line. What can Europe do really to help here?
Well, what Europe can do is doing what Europe can do best, and that is investing in making the European economy stronger in a structural way. And I think we should really make a distinction between what local, regional and national governments can do and what the EU can do from European level. I don't think that it's a European task to focus too much on the-spot social policy, because that is best done at local level, because that's where the people are that know best what to do in local circumstances. What Europe can do is invest largely in infrastructure. That's both railway infrastructure, ICT infrastructure, that kind of investments, but also the huge field of research and development. The only way to secure income in the future in Europe is to invest largely in research and development. That is where tomorrow's money is going to be made. So that is where the biggest added value lies from a European point of view. And I'm saying, as representative of the most pro-European party in the Netherlands, that we have to be very careful what we ask Europe to do. So let's have a look at the biggest added value from European level and have a very close look on what national, regional and local governments should do.
Spain, your country, of course, is particularly hit by the crisis. Youth unemployment over 50%, unemployment as a rule almost reaching 25%. And in your country, the Red Cross even had to launch a campaign to collect food. Poverty is gaining ground in Spain.
Yeah, but as I said, it's not only gaining ground in Spain. When we are speaking about the capacities and the potentialities of the European action or activity, it's not only about competitiveness of big industry or helping a banking system. We need also to put the third pillar, which is the social pillar, very clear on the European agenda. Is what
that hasn't happened yet.
No, this is the big problem, why citizens are going. I don't say that Mr. Gerbrandy, I recognize that his party is absolutely pro-European, but many other parties are becoming more and more, and a majority of most citizens are becoming anti-Europeans. Why? Because they don't see their daily problems solved or at least taken into account by the European Union. We are taking into account big enterprises problems or banking needs, but not these problems, and this is the social agenda, where really with the Erasmus program, with other programs that were really the cohesion policy, the redistribution policy, this is what Europe did for years very well, and the food aid is a strong signal that Europe is concerned of the problems, of the daily problems of the citizens, of the inequalities.
Do you agree with this view that Europe has forgotten the social element in its mission?
Well, I'm not sure. We still have a rather strong social policy. The problem is that it's not always very effective. Take, for instance, the European Globalization Fund, which was especially made for reaction towards the economic and financial crisis. But I don't think it's a very, well, let's say, effective instrument. It takes often a year before a program has been approved. And these are people who lose their jobs and they need aid rather soon and not within 1 year or not after 1 year. And that's one of the problems. That
is it due to red tape, bureaucracy? Or?
Well, I don't want to blame the Brussels bureaucracy, because it's not true that we have a huge bureaucracy here in Europe. The problem is more that we have to rethink whether something like that should be done through Brussels. I'm much more in favor of having such a policy at national, regional or local level, and we can use European funds for it, I don't mind, but we don't have to control it from Brussels. And that is my main problem. It has to be custom-made, it has to be timely, and therefore it doesn't always have to go through Brussels.
And I'd like to finish our debate talking about last week's summit on the budget, because after all, it's all about money. Regarding last week's summit, what is your view, Ines? Was it a big disappointment that no agreement came out of this budget summit? Or, after all, is it better to have no deal than a bad deal, and maybe we'll come up with something better in January?
Which kind of idea have we when we say, okay, the States of America, they have 23% of federal budget for investing, for redistributing.
Europe has 1%.
Less than 1, because GDP, right? This summit was to give less than 1. Then why not really being courageous enough, I mean, having this capacity to be more European, because Europe is about also a European budget, is about to have own resources, not national giving here and there with such big conditioning, even cultural conditioning, because when Mr. Gerbrandy, which is really nice and is offering this possibility that the Netherlands can help Spain, why should do that, because in the European thing we should be together and know each other better, and then have a real European budget, not a kind of bilateral charity, but really a budget which could be from these banking transactions or other
Europe
resources.
to have its own resources, like a
Yeah.
European VAT
European
or a
budget.
tax on
Yeah.
financial transactions.
Yeah,
Now, for the Netherlands, it's not only the amount which is problematic. You're saying the problem with this budget is that it's outdated. There's too much money going to a common agricultural policy, while it should go to things like innovation, research. So you're not happy with the current proposal by the Commission and the Council?
I wish that was the position of the Dutch government. They were more focused on getting the ceiling down of the total spending. And therefore I had the feeling that I was watching the annual conference of accountants instead of a meeting of our top politicians. Yeah. Because they were using their calculator only to see what was in the end coming to their own country. And that is not what we should discuss. What we should discuss on the European budget is how to spend the money much more effectively, especially in these times of austerity. It's not a matter of how much money, it's a matter of spending it much more effectively. For me, that means much less to agricultural sector, because the agricultural policy is almost bankrupt. It's not working. It's not doing what it should suppose.
And
what
it still
should
represents about 40% of the
It's a
total
huge
budget.
amount of money. And why not focus much more on how we spend the money? And if we do so, if we make the European budget much more effective, then I'm willing, as a Dutchman, to pay even more than we're doing now. Because in the end, in the long term, that's also in Dutch interest. Because we are an exporting country. We need prosperous regions in Spain, in Greece, in Poland, etc. That is our country, our terrain where we make money. So in a long-term vision, we need a strong European budget. But then it has to be spent very, very effectively.
Well, we'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid, as we're running out of time. Ines Ayala-Sender, thank you very much for talking to us. Gerben-Jan Gerbrandy, thank you very much. Now, please stay with us. We'll return after the news break. We'll bring you an interview with Vaira Vike-Freiberger, a former Latvian president. As you will see, she's calling on EU leaders to show more leadership and to be more European. That's just after the news break.